We are back for the 30 days of Dragon Paths here in September. We have the Draconic Path Beginner Guide for today, and just a quick little disclaimer here. The way that I understand the Draconic Path is probably completely different to how many people do. This is just how my dragons have instructed me what the Draconic Path means over my decades of working with them. And if you define it differently, or if you resonate with a different definition, that is totally valid. And I also encourage you to define the dragon paths for yourself. I think that is the most important thing when it comes to working with dragons, is defining them for yourself and defining your paths for yourself, and by extension the relationships that we will be discussing in today's video for yourself. And we have 5 parts in this video. We have the guide, we have the notes, we have the basics, we have the for all, like for anyone's belief systems can walk the Draconic Path, as well as my tips and tricks for you to begin the Draconic Path right now if you're ready. So without further ado, let's get into part 1 of this video and on the Draconic Path. So this is the dragon discipline of cultivating relationships with dragons. Each practitioner is unique in how they relate to their dragons, but for the most part, everyone will usually have a bond with a dragon that could fall under the definition of dragon guardian, a dragon spirit guide, and or a dragon deity. Plus there's extras too. This is the path of relating to the dragon. This path is unique for each practitioner, has unique relationships to their dragons. And this is just how I personally understand the Draconic Path, is that it is all focused around the way that we bond to our dragons and the various types of relationships that we can have with the dragons. So this path doesn't typically include any kind of a formal structure, as it varies depending on the nature of the dragons you've bonded to. And that would remain true for pretty much any practice with the dragons, but more so in this one, because even my dragon guardians don't give me like a structure for how to follow the Draconic Path. They just give me like a list of ways I can relate to dragons. For example, like I said, a primary dragon guardian versus a regular dragon guardian. And we'll go into those like details in a later part of this video today. So stay tuned for, I think it's part 3 or part 2 that it's in, but we have the sole focus is on bonding with dragons. That is like the primary way that I understand the Draconic Path, is just how do you bond to your dragons, right? When I was really young, this is like how I started like understanding dragons. When I was like a child, like a toddler, it was like, how do I relate to them? Like, is it my dragon guardian? Like, is it my dragon guide? Like, I don't know. So that's just kind of how the path started for me. When I was really young, it was only 2, right? Like I only understood like dragon guardian and like dragon guide, right? The dragon guardians were the ones who kept me safe. The dragon guides were the ones who took me on adventures, is the best way I could explain it from my childhood mind. But anyway, next we have types of relationships to the dragons will vary from practitioner to practitioner, but one thing will always remain the same. Dragon bonds are unlike anything else you've ever encountered, okay? So no matter who you talk to on the Draconic Path, no matter how different their practices are, my darlings, they will all share one thing in common, and that is there's nothing like being bonded to a dragon. So if that sounds like it resonates with you, you might already be on the Draconic Path. So next we have the beliefs, and it's very simple here. Typically just believes in dragons, like in any way, shape, or form. Even if you're an atheist, right? Like they just believe that the dragons have like relevance either historically, mythologically, or in a spiritual way for them through symbolism, right? It just depends who you talk to. But ultimately, each like person who's on the Draconic Path will have very different beliefs, but that's the one thing they share in common. So next we have the practice. So typically the practice is unique because the practitioner usually follows the guidelines their dragons share with them. And that is true for almost every dragon like witch I've met who identifies as being on the Draconic Path. They follow their own like prescribed system of like ritual or spell or ceremony or meditation or crafting that's like prescribed by their guardians, or that's inspired by like what they've learned in like mythology or throughout history, right? So next we have the purpose, okay? And the purpose is typically to be bonded to and connected with the dragons. This is often for a healing journey or self-evolution. And that's really straightforward, to be honest with you. Like, and pretty much for any dragon path that you'll find in this series or anyone who talks about it online, that's usually the reason why they're doing what they're doing with dragons. But I could be wrong. There might be some people who are working with dragons for other reasons, all right? I wouldn't know, you'd have to ask. But that is usually the purpose of this project with dragons that we got going on with our lives. But next and lastly, we have how to start. Typically, all you need to start is a connection to a dragon of any kind. And if you're already connected with a dragon spirit, you might already be on your own version of the Draconic Path and don't even know it, which is actually more common than you would think. Like, so don't feel like a fish out of water or anything. Like, you're totally in the right spot if that's how you are resonating in your life. But that's it for part 1. Next we have part 2, which is the Draconic Path notes, and this is basically just what makes my system of the Draconic Path unique to my practice outside of myself, and a way that my dragons have defined it for me that is just, I don't see anyone else talking about it in this specific way. So let's jump on into it. We have, in my craft, the Draconic Path is entirely focused on relationships with dragons and how to cultivate a connection to them. So most people that I know on the Draconic Path really focus on like ritual or like magic or like some sort of like intimate bond with just like one dragon in like all senses, right? Like they will find them as a friend, as a teacher, sometimes even a deity, and will like work in a very intimate practice on every single level with them. That is not how I understand the Draconic Path respectfully, excuse me. I understand it purely based on how you define the relationship that you are with, like with the dragon, right? So for example, my dragon guardian, my celestial dragon guardian Pickle Chips, he would be considered a primary dragon guardian because he's here pretty much every day. But then I have dragon guardians that I don't even know that my other dragons tell me are there, right? So like that is like how those are different. But then there's also like dragon spirit guides that aren't always around, and they just come and guide me through certain parts of my life or certain dreams or certain like meditation journeys, and then I never see them again. Or sometimes they come around every so often. It just depends. Like the difference between those relationships is the point of the Draconic Path for me in my practice. That is just how it's different for me, right? Okay, so next we have my system focuses on these types of dragon relationships that are, but not limited to, how to cultivate the connection with them, but are not limited to these types of relationships. We have the primary dragon guardian, which is there all the time, pretty much, except leaving when you're on trial or for whatever reason. Then we have dragon guardians that are primarily for protection. And again, this is just how I understand these relationships, but you might define them differently. So if you define them differently, let me know in the comments how you define these different kinds of relationships for you, because I would love to know if they're different, okay? So next we have the dragon guardians that are, again, there for protection primarily. Sometimes you know them, sometimes you don't. And then we have dragon spirit guides. I understand them as dragons that guide you through certain parts of your life or certain parts of your dreams, your meditations, your journeys, and things like that, right? Next we have dragon gatekeepers of magic, or also called co-magician dragons. These are dragons that come into our lives to teach us certain types of like magic, right? They'll like specialize in a type of magic we need to learn, or they only show up within ritual and help with our magic. These are kind of how we understand gatekeepers of magic, keepers of magic. I call them keepers, dragon keepers. And then I also think they're most commonly known as co-magician dragons these days. But that's one of them. And then we have dragon deities, right? So like the gods from myth, like Tiamat, like Apep, Leviathan, Jormungandr, Nidhogger, all of them, right? All of the beautiful things and the dragon deities of the world. And then we have landlocked dragons. So these are going to be dragon guardians of like nature in different places of the world. For example, like a guardian of a mountain back there. I work with the dragon guardian of this like mountain here. And when you leave that like physical location, you lose connection to them because they are landlocked in the sense that they guard that part of the land, right? So that is just personally how I understand those. And then we have object bound dragons. So it's like if I got these pairs of slippers and then I found out that there was like a dragon attached to them. I know, super random. It would have been a better example, like I bought the Kufia and then I met a Kufia dragon attached to it. That's kind of like what I'm saying. The best example I could give you is my dragon guardian Rosie. She is a primary dragon guardian now, but she is bound to a rose quartz dragon that I found like her in. not like, she's not like bound to it against her will. She says that it's her favorite thing on earth besides me, sweet thing, and she doesn't want to leave that. She told me not to lose it, and if I lose it, I lose her. She was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep the crystal over you, bestie. I was like, damn, Rosie. Okay. But anyway, object bound dragon. Okay, after roasting myself, moving forward, we have dragon ancestors. These are the dragons that you either inherit from like family, or they're like the dragons of like your bloodline. So for example, the red dragon on the Welsh flag that I still need to learn how to pronounce, how unfortunate is that? That dragon is considered a ancestor dragon of Welsh people, and like just depending where you're at, like look up the dragons from that location and those would be considered like your ancestor dragons, right? And then also dragon egregores and servitors, which are dragons we create, like spiritual entities or like advanced spells or sigils, depending on how you work with them or view them, to serve a certain purpose or to work with in a group. And that's just like a very vague description of it, because like my Book of Shadows is just like full of very detailed types of dragon relationships. Many I'm not allowed to share because they're very very specific in the way that I earned learning how to define that. So that's just how I understand that, like the Draconic Path through relationships. I really hope that made sense. I try to tell people and some people are confused by it, but let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I promise you I will answer every single question in the comments. Next we have, in my understanding of the Draconic Path, as my dragons have taught me, is this path is for those who are able to connect with dragons very easily or have a deep desire to connect to many dragons. Some people might disagree with this, that's totally fine. I just personally understand them this way, in the sense of like, my whole life I've been very like, it's been very easy for me to just like visualize like dragon types, like just have people give me words and then like draw dragons from those words like mashed together, and then like visualizing them, and like very much like you would probably call it maladaptive daydreaming when I was a little kid, but like that's kind of how it started, right? Because I was like left alone a lot and like kind of going through a lot of like trauma, unfortunately, when I was really young, which is when my connection to my dragons started. And unfortunately, there's definitely some maladaptive daydreaming that play a role in the visualizing of the dragons when I was little. Just wanted to be transparent about that to anyone who might be curious about that. But that's why I understand the Draconic Path through the lens of like people who just very easily connect to many dragons, but you might define it differently, which is absolutely valid. Next we have, this is the path of pure dragon trials. And what I mean by that is like when we're in relationships with dragons and we're focused on cultivating those bonds and making them stronger, and you know, getting more like, you know, deeper studies with these dragons that we've connected with, they will test you, okay? They're not just gonna like do the work for you. A lot of dragons won't like share things with you until like you do the majority of the work, and sometimes dragon trials can last for years or decades. Or maybe your lifetime actually too. Just so you know, it can be extremely grueling and like extremely tedious and difficult. It just depends on the dragons that you like connect with, right? And what they're helping you overcome. And the purpose of a dragon trial truly is to grow, like to grow past your bullshit and to level up for a better life. Like that is just, that's the deal, okay? Next we have, as I understand it, this craft is for those who work well with multiple spiritual energies as well. Again, there's a lot of people who just naturally really understand spiritual energy, how to work with spiritual energy, and are able to easily connect with multiple spirits. And that's just kind of like what that means, if that makes sense. Like, it's just important to understand that you could very well already be on the path because of that reason, like that point alone, right? So next we have, most of the dragons I work with on the Draconic Path rarely stick around after the trial is completed. And this is something that I actually don't think I've really talked much about on my channel, because it's honestly really depressing. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's many dragons that like will come around and I'll be really intimately bonded to for a long time, and then once I like finish what they wanted me to learn, the most important one is that, like, the most important example is that I had a dragon guardian while I was in an abusive relationship that only stayed for the relationship. My trial was getting in and getting out safely. And I miss that dragon every day of my life. But they were very explicitly clear they're not coming back. And that is just part of the Draconic Path, which is why I tell people, like, if you're not capable of handling heartbreak like that, maybe don't walk this path. Okay, next we have I personally recommend the Draconic Path to those who struggle to follow other paths. So just make your own. Like, my point is like, if there's other like dragon paths that have like, you know, called you, or like maybe felt like they were right for you, but you struggle like following a structure, do you know what I mean? The Draconic Path is probably going to be better for you, because like it's a bit easier following a structure that dragons give you. I don't really know how to explain it. Okay, but it's just better to get like their help, and like no pressure on you to follow a human way. Right? You work on your bonds with your dragons, and when you're ready they'll tell you what to do next, and that is just really, really beneficial to my brain, especially when I left the Mormon church, by the way. So just want you all to know that. Then we have the next part. All right, this is part 3, my basics, and this is how to get started on the Draconic Path after this video is finished, if you desire to start practicing right now. So this is just kind of like my general, I guess, consensus of how to start. It's very basic, right? But you can always change it to however it works for you, or let me know a better way in the comments, of course. But number 1, the most important step to begin is to make a connection with a dragon. To many surprise, you may already have one, especially from your childhood. There is no right or wrong way to connect to a dragon. Some meditate, some perform a formal ritual, some get a dragon connection reading, some build a dragon altar, some even see them in a dream, or some just ask, hey dragon, show up. You'd be surprised, sometimes they will if you just ask really, really nicely. Right? You know, it just depends who you are and how you connect. Some people prefer to meditate, some people prefer to build elaborate altars and give offerings, some people prefer to dance with dragons, or some prefer just to talk aloud and offer conversation. It really just depends on who you are and how you relate and connect, like not only with just humans, but like how do you connect with like the unseen, right? Like, does prayer work for you? Does like meditation work for you? Does chanting work for you? Do mantras work for you? Like, it just depends, right? Like, and that's the part that I think everybody kind of forgets is like a really important place to begin. You know what I mean? That's why I call it the first step. So don't be afraid to experiment with different ways to connect to, because that's how you find what works best for you as well. Number 2, we have, once you establish your connection to your dragon, the rest of the goal with them is to strengthen the bond between you and your dragons. It is but to ask the dragon and question how they prefer connecting. So once you kind of like start to build a space where you can connect, then the next ultimate goal is to actually just connect with that dragon. And I would say this is the path of like getting that primary dragon guardian relationship established as best as you can, in like a foundational way that you can build upon. Just getting all the basics down, you know what I mean? And then number 3, don't be surprised if after you decide to walk the Draconic Path, your first dragon trial is... Can I start over? That was really embarrassing. Holy crap. Okay, don't be surprised if after you decide to walk the Draconic Path, your first dragon trial is meeting a dragon. For some, it comes easy. For others, it takes effort. So if you're struggling to connect with a dragon, then chances are the dragon might already be there, but they're just seeing how consistent you'll be when they don't give you any like reassurance, right? They're just trying to see, sometimes gauge where like you're at mentally and spiritually, and it seems kind of mean sometimes, but it is what it is, I guess. In my experience and many of the hatchlings' experiences that they've shared with us in the Hatchling Clan, which if you'd like to join, by the way, it's the first link in the description down below. But number 4, we have, when the dragons decide you are ready, they will begin initiating you into difficult dragon trials. And it's really hard, man. Like I said, like one dragon only came around to escape an abusive relationship, and you know, pretty much anything you feel comfortable with defining as a dragon trial in your life, define it as a dragon trial in your life. If you ask me, I define being alive a dragon trial. So that's just like how broad my definition is of a dragon trial, and I'll definitely do a more in-depth video about dragon trials specifically, because they're like really kind of their own thing, you know what I mean, within all of the other paths and practices and stuff. But ultimately, it's kind of the beginning of the hardest part of this path, is when you, after you like connect with your dragon and they start testing you and putting you through trials, it can be very, very overwhelming. So just be aware of that, okay? Number 5, after cultivating a good rapport and connection, consistent connection with your primary dragons, experiment relentlessly, okay? And all I mean is that once you have that connection to your dragons, you have that like relationship, you have the space where you feel comfortable and you have a rhythm to it, that's when you can start experimenting with your dragons and experimenting with like connecting with them, or you know, working with them to create either rituals or create spells, or even just create journeys for yourself. Like a lot of people just make their own guided meditations and don't post it online. I don't know if you knew that, by the way, but it's something that you definitely can do. It's a good idea, by the way. But next we have number 6, with experience comes new unique dragon bonds. And that's kind of like the best part of the Draconic Path, is that the more you gain experience and the more you're consistent at it, and the more dragons you try to cultivate good connections to and unique relationships with, sometimes dragons will come back with new dragons for you to bond with in unique ways. I know this because my dragons do this with me pretty consistently throughout the years, and has introduced me to various types of dragons, including hatchling guardians, which I will talk about, of course, very soon here. But that's just kind of like that's like when the Draconic Path really starts to get fun, at least in like the way that I understand it, right? So next and lastly, number 7, dragons may leave once done for others to join you. And this is because, excuse me, I got distracted. This is because it's too overwhelming for the human brain to work with all of these beings all at once. And so that's why sometimes dragons leave you, so other ones can come in and teach you lessons that you can focus on without getting fried a little. That's the best way I could say it. But that's it for part 4. That's it for part 3. Now we're in part 4, excuse me. This is the Draconic Path for all. So basically the following are examples of how the Draconic Path might look like for different belief systems. And all that means is that like, no matter what you believe in, you can walk the Draconic Path. So if you're an atheist, the Draconic Path might look like this. For those who don't believe in a divine higher power, then the Draconic Path might look like developing relationships with various dragons in a symbolic way, rather than like as a spiritual entity. That means that they won't believe or like summon a dragon in the sense that like it's a spiritual connection, right? Some people define summoning like just like spiritually talking to some like spiritual entity. It really just depends, right? But then again, we also have, you know, like symbolic in a way, they'll literally look at like dragons like complex sigils, right? So again, that is just a pretty common way that the Draconic Path looks like for atheists. Next, if you're a polytheist, the Draconic Path might look like this for you. For those who believe in multiple divine creative forces, then the Draconic Path may look like establishing intimate connections with various dragon spirits and deities. For some, this even includes worshiping the dragons as they are guided to within their personal relationships. And it really can't be more straightforward than that, honestly. Like, it's a beautiful path for those who believe in multiple gods, because it just gives them a lot of variation, and there's a lot of accessibility in, like, for brains who like really work well with categorizing things. Shout out to my neurodivergent friends. But we love it, right? We love it. So that is what the Draconic Path might look like for a polytheist. But next, if you are a monotheist, the Draconic Path might look like this. So for those who believe in only one divine creative source, then the Draconic Path might look like worshiping God together with your dragons, or worshiping God as a dragon. However, it doesn't always include worship. For some, the dragons are just signs or gifts from God. So yeah, it's just like really kind of awesome to see like how many different ways you can work with the dragons. And I've even just like met people who like thought dragons were like God that they connected with, but then like they realized that it was just everything is God, you know? So it just depends who you are and what you talk to. Like some people believe that God is everything, so it just depends, right, how you personally perceive the world. If you're a monotheist, that's kind of how the Draconic Path might look. But next, we have the Draconic Path for Omnists. And for those who believe in all religions having truth, the Draconic Path looks like exploring the myths and bonding with dragons over time throughout your journey. And again, this will look different for each Omnist because they will engage with them differently, but it's pretty common for them to all really like kind of, the best way I could say it is like go around the world and like seek the lessons, the hidden truths within the all, if that makes sense. And then lastly, we have Animist. So this is what the Draconic Path might look like for you. And for those who believe in all creation having consciousness or like a spirit, the Draconic Path may look like bonding with dragons in all of creation, especially in the most unexpected places. That means like the dragons you find in your rings, or the dragons you find in your clothes, or the dragons you find in your home, like things that are within like inanimate objects to things that you'd really never expect. Even dragons that are intangible, like on the internet. Like you just have to be creative with it. Truly, your perception is the only limitation when it comes to the Draconic Path. And that's it for part 4. And now lastly, we have part 5. So here are my Draconic Path tips. And basically, these are my best tips, tricks, and reminders for the Draconic Path and how to stay on the path and how to get back on if you fall off the path. So the more you focus on how creative you can be with connecting to your dragons without labeling what the relationship is until the dragon tells you, has been the most successful method for bonding with dragons when working with my students. So all that means is that try to engage with dragons and establishing relationships with them with like an open mind, in the sense like you don't expect anything, like you're trying to connect with them and learn from the dragon. It's about being guided by the dragon, not by the human way of working with the dragon, right? So ultimately, that's what really makes the Draconic Path so significant, in the sense of like, no, your dragon is like directly like the main source and guide, sometimes more so than like other paths or other variations like of dragon spirituality. And when it comes to being creative, like I mean be as creative as you possibly can. Like if making them a bowl of macaroni and cheese and like eating it with them and having a conversation is a way you bond with your dragons, bestie, that's how you bond with your dragons. Like there's no shame, all right? Just maybe don't do certain things that we're about to talk about, but I digress. Some people will do it anyway. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Next we have, even if one definition for a type of relationship to a dragon doesn't feel 110% correct, then work with your dragons to define the relationship better. And I'm always going to say this, okay? Like never, ever, ever take something that you see outside of you online, in a book, whatever, before like what the gut is telling you and what the brain is registering in your like pain center. What I mean by that is like if you're forcing yourself to do something, guess what? You're going to be traumatizing the brain and the body. Like I mean, when you do this and you have these relationships with these dragons, it has to be consensual in the sense of like, yes, I consent to this type of a relationship with the dragon. Like, so make sure that if the definition that maybe I provided or you've seen online like doesn't work for you 100%, take the time to define it for yourself. There's no shame in that, and it's actually going to help you more in the long run. So next we have prepare yourself for dragons to sometimes leave for long periods of time or indefinitely. This is a normal part of the Draconic Path, so do your best to prepare for the potential of them vanishing. And this is something that I really like to emphasize, especially to people who are like beginners in any sort of like magical or spiritual practice. I'm like, okay, wait a second, maybe don't just like jump into this, because like sometimes the dragons might abandon you and it might really stress you out. So work your way up to it. If that is something that's going to affect you mentally or spiritually. Some people, they don't care. Some people, they like that, actually. They like that element, and that's amazing. It's, again, just a matter of like finding truly like the best for you. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of getting eaten alive in this grass, so we're gonna have to leave soon. But anyway, next we have, it is not uncommon for your closest dragons to disappear when they have put you on dragon trial for self-growth or healing. So this is something that I also frequently work with my students on. Sometimes when they're working with their dragons just don't show up from time to time, and usually it is like because they're on trial, and all that means is like they're being tested. Basically, it's like a pop quiz from a dragon, if you will, and it's about your self-growth, and it's about improving your life, and it's about improving your mental health, your spiritual state, or really insert anything that makes your life a better quality of life. And that's just something to really remember when it comes to working with dragons, is that sometimes they can, you know, vanish, but also know some dragons like literally never leave you. I've also definitely come into contact with hatchlings who have dragons that literally never go away, which I think is very sweet. But then we also have each dragon bond is so different. Don't even let a single soul ever define what your dragon is to you. Truly, that's the best thing I can tell you. People are going to want to define your dragons, and if you let them, it's going to give power over your practice. So fuck them. Yeah, define them yourself. Which is going to make the next tip seem a little strange, but I'm still going to give it to you because I think it's good. I think it's a good thing to talk about. Please avoid sexual relationships with dragons. Yeah, wish I didn't have to say that. I really have to say that. I wish I didn't have to say that. And look, some people have sexual relationships with their dragons in ways that probably are beneficial that I don't know about. But for the most part, just don't make your relationships with your dragon sexual, out of respect and integrity. And out of keeping your human relationships more healthy. Just trust me on that one, okay? Just in the psychological department, trust me on that one. Okay, so lastly we have, don't be afraid to start over if you have to, and say no to dragons if you are uncomfortable with their requests. And this is gonna be my most important tip of the video. Probably gonna make it short, okay? If a dragon ever says you have to do something that you're uncomfortable with, you do not have to do it. You have free will. They cannot force you. I don't care how big of a dragon they are. I don't care if they're Tiamat herself. They will not force you to do something you don't want to do. You can always say no, all right? I need you to understand that as a being embodied, you actually have a lot more power than you realize, okay? So that's all I have to say. I have acquired about 27 bug bites since I made this video. Was totally worth it. I had no idea. I think I'm right in front of a mosquito nest. So we're gonna spray the garden. I'm going to scream about the Maketos later. And thank you so much for spending some of your day with me today. If you have not already checked out all of the resources, this video includes a bunch of free resources on all of my platforms like Patreon, my website, Facebook, Tumblr, Discord, like Amino, like all of it, for you to better understand how to get started on the Draconic Path. And there will be like a master guide within the Hatchling Clan. soon as we get there and get it up there. So if you're new here, assalamu alaikum, merry meet, and welcome back to your daily dose of DragonFaether. My name is Azura DragonFaether, the Draconic Priestess, and I've been working with dragons since the 90s, here to bring all of my systems of how they've taught me to work with them to you now. And I cannot wait to jump back into all of these systems. I will see you very, very soon. And don't forget to click all of those resources down below and join the Hatchling Clan Discord if you want to learn more about these paths and hang out with the hatchlings. But yeah, until next time, stay geeky, chicken, and freaky, little hatchlings, and fuck mosquitoes. Allah, peace, blessed be, and Amin. And please follow me so I don't get lost.
We'll see you back next time for your DDLDF, and like, comment, subscribe for your DDLDF. And if you didn't get enough, make sure to check down below to see what I'm up to and be in the know. So stay geeky and cheeky and freaky, little hatchlings. Stay geeky and cheeky and freaky just for